Hi, everyone. So bittersweet that we are at the last chapter of our story. Um, my kitten has found a way to play with everything. So if you just hear some extra background noise, it's him. He's really starting to feel very at home here. So we just found out what happened with Red Streak, and we're gonna see what happens with the tree folk and that village and everything for this last chapter. And then after the chapter, I will also just read. I'll just add, and I'll be reading the author's notes afterwards. So, chapter 28. Kira had come to the lake early, seeking a quiet place to think, and for a while she had it all to herself, the soft morning sunlight filtering through the leaves and shimmering on the surface of the water. But a curious thing happened while she sat there on the grass of the little meadow. People started to filter into the clearing from the trees, and not just a few of them, but many, many tree folk came out into the open to enjoy this beautiful morning. They gave Kira her space, but offered her warm smiles and friendly waves as they walked by, greeting her by name. Before the events of the last few months, only a handful of people had ever acknowledged her presence. Now it seemed that everyone in the forest knew her name. And she wasn't the only one who had made new connections. As she observed her surroundings, she saw that people were not clustered in little groups of 2 or 3 anymore. Big gatherings were forming. 3, 4, and 5 families coming together to share food and splash in the water. The adults talking to themselves while the children ran wild, laughing and playing. Again, Kira felt like she could be back in Xadu. She smiled wistfully. What would that make what she was to do easier or more difficult? You sound like you have something on your mind, Meerkat. She turned to Mome, walking up towards her. May I sit with you for a spell? She patted the grass next to her. Of course. She settled in beside her but didn't say anything. Mome knew silence better than anyone she had ever met. Finally, she gestured all around, at everyone who was filling up the meadow and the lake. Did someone invite all of these people down today? For a celebration or something? Of course. He gave her a sidelong look and raised one eyebrow. You did. She wrinkled her brow. No, I didn't. I would have remembered that. Mome grinned. Perhaps you didn't make an announcement, but you have shown them in a different way. They had an open invitation to gather, and they are enjoying it. I would venture to say there will be such many celebrations from now on, all over the forest. Kira watched a gaggle of small children chase one another on the shore, while others stood in the lake, trying to splash them. They were all shrieking with delight. It makes me happy to see them happy. They were silent for a while again. Finally, Mome gestured to the knapsacks lying at her feet. Are you traveling somewhere? She took a deep breath, admitting to herself as half as much to him. I am. Ah, I thought so. Are you, I don't know, mad at me? He placed a scarred hand over hers. It will be sad to see you go, because I will miss you. But I have said goodbye to many good friends in many places. I understand the need to leave when you think the time is right. Do you feel the time is right? For you to leave? Only one person in this world can answer that. He gazed at her with his kind eyes. Have you told your family? She sighed. Yes, last night. How did they take it? She chewed on her lip. Not very well, at first, especially Luan. They have always been here, so it's harder for them to imagine any place else. He nodded. Loba blames you, at least partially. Momo raised his eyebrows. And why is that? On the ridge, after I gave a big speech and you stood up for me, and when you told me what happened before in Xadu wasn't my fault, that's when I started to think about leaving. Mome nodded again. I understand. I didn't want you to feel like you had to carry that burden of shame any longer. It was too heavy, and it wasn't your burden anyway. Similarly, You must not carry the burden of having saved us. Everyone played a part. Oh, I know, she said quickly, eager to show her agreement. We all did it together. She didn't think she would ever forget the collective feeling of elation she and the tree folk had experienced immediately after their victory. Wild and cheering and dancing had broke out. Tiha had been lifted onto people's shoulders, and Luan, well, Loba hadn't batted an eye when his son declared his intention to be a hook hunter. The joy had soon been tempered by the reality of the losses they suffered. They've spent days burying and mourning the dead, and weeks cleaning up the river and the forest. The recovery process was ongoing. It would be slow, but beautiful days like this one helped heal the community. And Kira could plainly see that it was much more of a community than ever before. Mome brought her out of her thoughts. The only thing you should carry is the truth, which you have done admirably. He looked up at the sky, then back at her. And now I'm guessing you'd like to carry it further. I am a storyteller. Her voice was clear, all traces of hesitation or doubt gone. Like my father, my first father, and the storyteller travel. Will you tell people about the takers? That's part of it, yes, but there are lots of other stories to tell. Somehow I learned from my father, some from you, and most I have picked up from my own experiences, everything I've seen. Mome shook his head slowly. You have been through so much. It seems that you have packed several lifetimes into your few years already. He put an arm around her and pulled her close for a hug. It would be quite remarkable to see what you can do with the rest of your years. She grinned and leaned into him. Well, maybe if you will. Luan's family made me promise to come back at the start of every dry season. I have to stay for at least a month, and they promised to fatten me up and listen to my new stories. They are good people. So are you. Mome patted her shoulder and then stood up and stretched, his old back crackling and popping. Well, I should probably get going. As you say, there's much more to see and much to be done. Any words of advice? He thought again, weighing her words. You have a gift. I'm glad you've chosen to share it with the world. She smiled, trying to keep her tears at bay. I'll see you again in the dry season. Mome walked away for a few steps, paused in mid-stride, and then doubled back. There is one more thing. I wasn't sure whether or not I would tell you, because I hear many things, and not all of them turn out to be true. Yes? He searched for the clearing with his eyes, and then they settled back on her. I have heard of a man who has been walking from village to village across the Great Lands over the last few seasons. He is a master storyteller, and he wins every competition he enters. Kira sat up straighter. Mome added, he has also been warning people about the takers. Kira couldn't breathe, just stared at him for several moments. Paha? She whispered. Was there a chance he could have escaped from the volcano? Mome merely shrugged. I don't know, Meerkat. As I say, I hear many tales, and truth can be a slippery thing. But it's something to keep in mind for your travels. He bent over and gently kissed the top of her head. Then he turned and was gone. Kira's belly was full of butterflies, and her mind was going in 100 different directions. But she had become good at juggling different ideas and emotions at the same time. She took a deep breath before she too stood, stretched, and picked up her pouches. She walked to the edge of the clearing, taking a moment to soak in the spirit of kinship that was radiating from all of the people enjoying their day together. Then she turned back and walked toward the trail out of the forest. She did not know if it was a part of her story to ever see her father again, but in any case, she intended to live a life that would make him proud. So I wonder, what, we know that Kira is going to do some storytelling, but where? And that's just kind of ended, and I guess it leaves it to our imagination and our inferencing about where she's going and what she's doing. So that is the rest of our story. and I will be doing a quick video about just the author's notes right after this. So I'll see you later.